In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the advanced list commands. This is part of a set of new commands and functions that was released some months ago, maybe like 5 months ago, I think. It's been some time, and I wanted to do this originally, but when I first started using these, like, a bunch of stuff went wrong. Some of the text wasn't right explaining what they do. I was just really frustrated by the whole thing. In fact, still to this day, I think some of the text isn't really right. Like on pop, it says removes and returns the first list item. That's not really what it does, or maybe I don't understand it properly, but whatever. The point is, it wasn't really working at the time. Not well enough to show a video, but now it works pretty well. I think that most of the little bugs, like there was an issue with the debugger as well, and things weren't showing properly in there, and I think everything for the most part works now. So now is sort of the proper time to show. I'm definitely going to show advanced list. I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to do advanced table. There's threading in here somewhere. So I'll show the threading part for sure in one of the videos, and I don't know how many of these I'm going to go over. I'm going to try and do most of them. I'm really not sure about charting. When I first used it, it was a nightmare. So if that works, ideally, eventually I'll go over all of these. But for now, we're going to do advanced list, and then I'll probably do advanced table next. And then the thread spawn is definitely something I know people are going to be interested in, and I like it a lot, so we'll go over that as well for sure. But let's just talk about advanced list in this video and what all this stuff is. Probably the most exciting of these is the with each. What this is it's going to take each of the items in your list, and it's going to do whatever you want with them using this variable. And the reason that's exciting is because you can just make code a little bit simpler when you're using this. Like if we wanted to go to Google and take a list of search items and search through each one, we could maybe make like a little program that does that, and we're going to do it the way that that you used to do it. So let's just put in a navigate here. Let's create a list real quick. Call it searches. Really call it whatever. Let's add a list to that and do a list from text. I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3. Now we can loop for the list total of that. We're going to navigate here and then insert the next list item. And it is, of course, going to just go to Google. It's going to search 1, 2, and 3. Let's put in a little wait here. And after we search, let's put in another wait for like 2 seconds, and then let's go away from Google. Okay. So this is sort of like the old way to do things, right? Go to Google, searches, okay, so where this is going to differ now when we use the with each is instead of using next list item, and instead of using looping for the list total, that part is already sort of built in, right? So we can just say with each list item, we're going to call the variable search term, and now we can copy this code here. I should have put this in like a function or something, but we're just going to copy it. Oh, yeah, stop. That's what we want. We can use this variable now. And overall, it just makes things, I think, a little bit cleaner and a little bit simpler as well. You know, we're not having to loop for the list total anymore or call this next list item. We can just use this with each. And I think that once you use it once or twice, you will probably just always use it. So I think it's a nice addition. Like I said, I think it makes things a little bit cleaner and a little bit simpler. And that's really what you want in the end. Also, it makes it faster because you don't have to now go searching for the list total and then copying the list after that. Although I guess you're still going to have to copy it into here. But yeah, so I'm a really big fan of this with each, and I think you should try it. And I think you probably won't go back to doing it the old way. It's a little thing, but you know, how many times are you using loops in your programs and you're looping for the list total of something and then using next list item? I imagine in pretty much every program you make, you're going to be interacting with those specific commands and functions. Those are going to be some of your most essential that you're using, and likely probably in almost every program. So it is actually a pretty big deal, even though it seems like a minor thing. So I'm a real big fan of that. Alright, remove text from list. Let's see what they say it does. They say it removes a list item according to its contents. Okay, so let's create a list, and then I'm gonna have to put that in here. I think I'll get an error. Let's just call it remove. Let's choose some text. I'm going to say text. Alright. So we need to create a new list. Okay, the text. So the text that we want to remove is going to be called text. So I'm going to write text as the first item. Then we're going to write text 2, text 3, something, and then we're going to put another text, and the delimiter is going to be a comma, and we're not going to delete duplicates. Okay, so theoretically, let's see, it removes a list item according to its contents, and there is a little drop down here. Do you want to remove the first item or all? So theoretically, it will remove just this text, right? And this one takes a second. No idea why, but it seems very, very slow when it's doing this. I could understand why on a large list, and I don't know how it's going to perform on a really large list, but even with very small lists, it seems to be very lagged. But yeah, of course, it does remove our text here. Now, what happens when we put text, whatever, you know, something like that? I think the question is it going to remove this first list item? And basically, no. It's looking for the exact, not does it contain something, but is it the exact text? Now today is November 10th, 2015, and this is version like 5.9.4 or something like that. And there's something important that I want to point out, and that is if you use all, at least for me, you know, it's something you may want to test on your own, it does not work. Like, it doesn't do anything, essentially. Like, here's 6 list items. If I clear the list and I run it, we have 6 list items. When I run this whole thing, we have 6 list items. And in fact, what I should do is put an alert here, so we know that it's finished, because it is a command that does lag. Whoops. I mean, of course, I forgot to do that. But you can see here that it's done. and we still have 6 items. We still have our text. So I don't know what's going on with that. That's something that I think I'll have to report. I want to say that I did report it already though, but if not, I'll report it or search for that in the bug tracker. But that's something that's not really working right now. But essentially, remove text from the list is going to remove an exact item from the list, and it's going to remove the first one, at least for now. And maybe in the future it will remove all of them. So it's such a what's the word I'm looking for here? Like, it's such a specific thing. There's only going to be certain very specific use cases for this. I'm trying to think of a scenario here as sort of like a live example. Maybe if you created a program and somebody wanted to exclude things, right? So like maybe yeah, it's actually hard to think of a scenario, but I'm sure it'll come in handy. I sort of don't want to sit here all day thinking up a scenario for this one, but I'm sure it will come in handy at some point. It's a very specific use case though, but it's nice to have that function built in, because otherwise you're going to have to actually do a lot of work to replace that on your own. If you wanted to do that on your own, you would have to loop through the whole list looking at each list item. You're going to have to write a lot of code to do that. And so it's a really handy but specific use case kind of thing. Okay, replace list item. This one is pretty simple. It is going to just replace the position. So let's call it replace. We'll call position 2, and the new item, we'll just say new item, and then we can just make a list. Add list to list. Okay, and this should replace the second list item with a new item. And it does. So again, this is kind of something that's going to be more specific use cases. Like, you're not going to be using this in like all of your programs, but I'm sure it'll come in handy for some things, because again, if you wanted to code this out yourself, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to look through the whole list yourself. You're going to be having to use this with each command, or you're going to have to do it the old way, and it's going to be a lot of extra code. So while you won't be using it all the time, it is something to keep in mind. And maybe there's something you can think of, like a scenario in which you can use this and it's going to be useful, or maybe you have a program already which you can sort of replace this. It's going to make the code a lot shorter and cleaner, and that's what you want in the end, of course. Alright, so let's talk about enqueue. Enqueue is going to add an item to the end of the list. We're just going to use this same list here for sake of time. So we have our list. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 after this reruns here, and we can enqueue a 6. Let's see. Wait, let me think for a sec. Okay, yeah. Enqueue is yeah. So enqueue is going to be adding it to the end of the list, and this is something that's probably going to be a little bit easier to understand if maybe you're from the United Kingdom or maybe elsewhere where they use the word queuing a lot more frequently. In the United States, we use lines. I don't know why, but we call it like lining up. And you know, everyone hates lining up, but everyone in the United Kingdom and elsewhere probably hates queuing. So For US people, think of it like you're going onto the end of the line. You're going to the end of the list. For everyone else, just think of it as you're queuing up and you're at the end of the queue. And I think that that'll make it really easy to remember. One thing to think about is you also have add item to list. And you can sort of think of it as like, well, it does that. So how it differs, maybe it does it differently on the back end. That's something that I'm not really 100% sure on. But you can think of it also as adding an item to a list, because essentially it's doing the same thing, as far as I can tell at least. The only difference is here you get the option to delete duplicates, but by default it doesn't, right? So like this is going to do the same thing. It's not going to delete the duplicate, whereas this does it. It does it the same way by default anyway. So they're practically the same thing, at least as far as I can tell. Pushing. Pushing is like the opposite of queuing. You're sort of like pushing your way to the front of the queue, right? Or to the front of the line. And this is you're forcing like something to the front. So if I put a 0 there, as you can see, it is going to add it as the first item, and I can keep doing that, and it's going to be like sort of like adding an item to a list at a specific position and then adding it to position 0. So pushing, just sort of think of it as like pushing your way to the front of the line or pushing your way to the front of the queue. That one's fairly easy to remember. So let's talk about dequeuing and popping. In these, I should say, I feel like these are going to be used a fair bit. You know, you probably already use add item to list, and you probably even add items like it at the position. Let me see here. Add item, or yeah. So you could change the list position first, and then like add an item there. I think that's like adding items to a list in the front and back is something that's going to be used like a lot, but this being able to take items off the tops and bottoms of the list, I think that's going to be used even more frequently. So what this is going to do here, if we dequeue something, I'm going to use this list here, and alright, so this is where it gets a little confusing though. It says it removes and returns the first item in a list, and then pop says it removes and returns the first list item. To me, that's very confusing, and I did open up a tracker, bug tracker about the pop text, saying it should not say that, but it got rejected. So I don't know. Again, maybe there's some sort of wording here that I'm missing, but to me this is very confusing. But dequeue is the one that is going to take it from the top, so we should get like 0 in this case, right? And something I want to mention is this has 14 list items. We can sort of see what happens here when we dequeue. It is leaving, right? So dequeue, again, think of it as like a line, and you're leaving the line. You're the first person in line and you're leaving. That's what dequeuing does. It's going to be taking that away. So if we have 2 zeros here and we run this again, we're leaving it. So we only have 1 0 now, and we run it a few more times, we'll get the 0, the 1, 2, 3 kind of thing, you know. So popping, I'm gonna copy this. When we pop something, it says that it removes and returns the first list item, which should be 3, but take note that the last item is 6, and it returns our 6, and it also removes it. So it does remove it, but I think it does what it's supposed to. I think it's just worded improperly. Because really it's returning the last one. So it's just weird to think about the way that they have this whole thing set up, and it's a little bit confusing. I'm still a little confused even looking at it. But when you in queue something, you put it at the back of the list, right? It's going to be like the last list item. And then when you dequeue, you're the first one. When you push something, you're pushing it onto the top of the list. And then when you pop it, you're sort of taking it from the bottom. So I would just wish they could word this a little bit better, but that's the best like little explanation that I could give. But regardless, I think that dequeuing and popping are very useful, because you're not only using that list item, but you're removing it. So there's gonna be a lot of cases in which that's gonna be useful. So this has been the video for the advanced list, and I will be making these periodically, explaining some of what the other ones do as well, because I think that now is a good time to start using them, and I think that some of these especially with each are ones that you're going to want to be using. So